FinTech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in FinTech Executive Search. Jacko, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dexter. Thanks for having me.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. I guess, for the main reason being that I still remember that chat that we had. I think it was in October 2020 with you and your co-founder Francois in DY, and you were telling me about this idea that you had in this fintech that you're trying to get off the ground, and here we are 18 months later, where you've done all of those things, and I'm just delighted to have you on where we can talk to you about that journey and talk a little bit more about Paytron and what you do.
Thanks a lot, Dexter. Yeah, it was a great day. It's funny, you get these turning moments in life. That's one of those meetings that I recall extremely well. I remember where we sat. I remember what we had. It was one of those weird meetings where you kind of felt like, that this is one of those turning points. So look, since then, we've actually launched the company. Sometimes I can't believe it's only been just a shy over a year and a half.
Yeah.
We've really had our heads down and tried to work extremely hard to get this company into a place that is adding value to our customers.
So would you mind telling us a little bit more about Paytron, what you do, the problem that you solve, and who it's for?
Yeah, so essentially the idea started just a couple of months prior to October before meeting you. And we were exposed to some parts of the market where we witnessed how a lot of companies are still processing all their accounts payable. And what I mean by that is, in particular, how a business is making payments on their invoices. If they're getting a bill, how that bill processes through an SME. Essentially, what we are trying to solve here is actually make the AP process a lot easier, but in particular, business payments. Now, business payments is one of those words which is really, it's a really wide term, and it needs to be defined if you're talking about a certain aspect. You get business payments where you talk about the Stripes of the world, or you get business payments where a lot of people think about card payments or merchant payments. In our particular area, we're actually talking about transfers, actually business payment transfers. So that means it's the payment for local transactions, international transactions, or payroll transactions, and for business expenses.
When I'm sending out an invoice to get paid for that, usually it's a bank transfer. That's kind of the stuff that you're talking about, where it's kind of tends to be significant amounts.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that right?
Exactly right. Yeah. So where we focused initially was we saw a pain point that the businesses are actually experiencing and being overloaded by having to process these invoices manually on a day-to-day basis. And if you look at the staff shortages that are currently in Australia and around the world, actually, it's getting harder and harder to process these invoices manually. Now, we are on the side where we're helping a business to actually make the payment of these bills. If you receive the invoice, it's a bill. And if you have to process it manually, we're trying to make that a lot easier.
Yeah.
So that's where the idea started, but it's expanded a lot since then, actually more to the feedback of our customers that have asked for more and more features around this.
Right. So what are some of the kind of features that you've now kind of brought into the product from that initial chat that you and I had and Francois?
Yeah, so in particular, what we've discovered is that there's a really good way how you can automate how these bills flow through a business. So in particular, we have connected to the accounting systems. Now, it's not just a normal integration. A lot of people are integrating, but they have a distinct point where they only upload or download something which you call a bank feed. Yeah. Now, we've got one step further into Xero, and we've got one step further into MYOB Advanced. Where what we do is we actually pull the bills directly, but then do the reconciliation in the back end after the payment has been made.
Right.
So our system really takes care of that full end-to-end process. But what we've also then done is we've connected a company's bank account to this particular area. Right. And that makes the actual payment and the flow of funds a lot smoother.
Right. there's been a lot recently, over the last couple of years, particularly around fraud, around small businesses and significant amounts where, people have lost. Is this something that helps on that side as well?
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is probably one area that we've added a lot of value to our community. So if we receive a bill, whether we pull it in from Xero or our users upload it into our platform, we OCR scan that entire bill, and we then check if that invoice has been tampered with. Now, there's a few ways that you can do this, but we actually do a lot of work in the back end. I wouldn't call it AI, but if you want to go into marketing spiel, sure, you can call it AI. But we've actually done a lot of work where we go and check and see, is the ABN really like a valid ABN? Are these people registered on the tax side? Do they actually have a tax registered entity? Now, what we found is there's quite a lot of these invoices that actually change. About 80% of these invoices that are changed don't actually have a fraudulent attack on them, but it is like a normal change. Like, for example, somebody's bank account is updated, or their address changed, or their email address gets changed. We actually pick that up and we highlight it to our users.
Right.
But that said, Dexter, like, we've seen a significant increase of fraud as well. A lot of people in the ecosystem has been affected recently. I did a talk at one of the small business forum a few weeks ago. And even on that day, ourselves and our partners highlighted to a couple of our customers that they've been attacked by fraud in particular. So it's happening more and more in Australia right now, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. So you've kind of been on this journey this last 18 months. Where are you at now? Because when we first connected, it was just you and Jacco. You and Francois. So where are you at now, Jacco, in terms of people and kind of customers, etc.?
Back then we was only the actual two of us.
Yeah.
We've now grown to a team of 30.
Wow.
Which is all in Australia, but we have a hybrid remote first culture. And it's something which, has really worked in our favor. We've got a whole team in Adelaide. We've got a team in Melbourne. We've got a team in Brisbane. We've got a team in Sydney. And so the team has grown significantly. We've grown into a few hundred customers as well.
Wow.
Now, our customers in particular are very large corporates that are starting to benefit from our technology. We initially thought it's just for like small business. But one thing we've learned, Dexter, is like as a company gets bigger, the only thing that happens is all their problems get bigger as well. Yeah. And they try and solve this by throwing more staff at it. And it's not always the answer. Sometimes you have to incorporate technology to kind of solve these problems.
Yeah.
So our business really has grown into these upper echelon of these systems. And we're starting to reach into the E space as well now.
Awesome. So when you kind of look back over this last 18 months, Jacco, what would you say kind of have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced getting to this point?
Yeah. Initially it was staff, Dexter, but I think as the problem became clear that we're solving a real solution, it wasn't just a pie in the sky thing.
Yeah.
Staffing hires has become a lot easier for us.
Right.
So that challenge is overcome. I think
has that been because of kind of bringing people in and then they're bringing people from their own networks, or was it just from a branding perspective?
I think it's a little bit of both, but if you play in payments, it's a pretty attractive space, and it's a very big space to kind of attack. I think one thing that we've done, to your point, is if you work and you manage to hire really good people want to work with other good people.
Yeah.
And it tends to have a snowball effect, right? So I would rather, I'd be very careful. And, if you pick the kind of headhunters or recruiters really well, they can introduce you to some really good people. And I think in that case, like, in the business that you're in, it's particularly important to find somebody that you trust and to find somebody really good that can point you to that first hire and that second hire. Another challenge that we faced is just figuring out how our sales process worked.
Yeah.
And figuring out where the actual buyer is, who's the decision maker. Initially, we thought it's the business owner, and more and more it's becoming clear to us that there's a whole bunch of people involved in the buying process. So that was important. And I think that the third thing that we struggled with is our initial product was, if I look back, really bad.
I didn't want to say anything.
Our initial product was really bad. But what's important, I think, is if you are willing to let your ego go and you listen, and you listen to a customer's feedback. The answer really is in the interview of the customers. The customers will really tell you where the real pain point is, and it's finding out how do you solve a real pain point instead of just building something cool.
Yeah. I guess, you haven't talked there about raising capital. Has that been something that you've found has been challenging?
You know what? It's not been challenging. We actually were found by our first investors from Europe as well, and also by Australian investors. We actually approached them after the Europeans approached us. We've got some great investors on our board in Australia and in Europe. And when we went to market, we actually did a raise earlier this year, which we didn't announce to the market at all. We tried to kind of just, move on things. I didn't see the point of trying to make a big hoo-ha about raising capital.
Yeah.
I think the real thing is about adding value. Raising capital is not really an accomplishment in itself, I think. So we managed to get some incredible people from the US as well, people from California that are on some really important, big businesses over there. We're pretty excited to have all of these investors on board. I would say in the current market, if I was to raise now, I would probably say it would probably be really challenging.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's quite interesting. There's still massive demand. We have a whole bunch of investors at the moment that are reaching out to us even as I speak. If I speak to you, we've got about 9 or 10 people that are very keen to talk to us. So I think if you're solving a real problem, at the end of the day, I think you and I spoke about this offline as well. If you're adding real value and you're adding, you're trying to solve a real pain point, there's always going to be investors that are interested, right? You
got hundreds of paying customers, which is a proof point. There's a real problem there to be solved as well.
Yeah, exactly. But look, I mean, every small startup, every business is going through various pain points in their startup life. I would say, there is a lot of challenges and things that I haven't even talked about that are, small challenges that you have to overcome on like a daily basis.
Yeah. You've been traveling quite a bit as well. So you were at Amsterdam for Money 2020. You've been to the UK recently. What's your kind of general, what's your sense as to the general mood out there globally in fintech? Is it all doom and gloom or is there...
I'm surprised by a few of our businesses that were going B2C. Few of our competitors are starting to move into the infrastructure space. I found that really surprising. I think they're finding the actual sales process really tough.
Yeah.
In speaking to some of them on the ground at, the conferences, I was very surprised at the point in time to actually see them saying they're going to go after infrastructure. But I didn't find like a doom and gloom at all.
Right.
I find Europe and UK really positive, and I think a lot of people are still very much upbeat.
Yeah.
That said, I did start to pick up from a few investors in Australia. I feel that because our market is so heavily aligned to a couple areas of tech that are still new and still up and coming, I find Australia to be much more doom and gloom than a lot of the rest of the world. I think there's still certain areas in the rest of the world that are only starting now to kind of migrate over. And if you look at Europe, Dexter, we've had to deal with like a couple of our partners over there. Their banking system, as advanced as they are, is still very far behind in a lot of aspects. So there's a lot of room for improvement there. And I think that people can still, see that room for improvement still happening.
Yeah. It's interesting that you talk about the kind of pivot to infrastructure, because I actually seen this probably going back 2015, 2016. And it happened with SaaS, where you had, because of the App Store, you had this kind of wave of productivity apps that you would have probably had lots of them on your phone that were using the freemium model.
Yeah.
And I think it was then there was a little bit of heat, and VC very much gave it, okay, we need to start seeing revenue now. And we started to see then, there were kind of three outcomes. One was, they'd pivot to the B2B model and look to go kind of corporate and enterprise. They get acquired by Microsoft, and they would just, put the app into, the Microsoft platform or whatever, or Google, or they would just go out of business. And I kind of see, I think for fintech, we're kind of facing that same dilemma right now. And it's, it's just a natural outcome of when things start to get tight. We're not all, we're not seeing massive stimulus. There's kind of headwinds there that I think you have to then buckle down and really kind of show that this is a real business. And the innovation piece, kind of goes on the back burner, and it's very much around how do we just start to make this thing generate some money.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think, there's a point in time where you have to move back to what we like to call the real economy.
Yeah.
And it's going back and saying, like, what are we actually doing? Are we just a bunch of people building a couple of solutions that we hope to get into people's hands? Or is this actually something that is going to add value and, adding significant amount that you can charge for it? I think it's one of the most honorable things in the world, right? Like, it sounds ridiculous, but if you are looking at somebody and you say, listen, I'm going to produce this for you and I'm going to charge you this amount, and the other person on the other side goes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're adding more value than what this is costing me. So I want this, right? That is at the essence of what we should be doing in real business is adding more value than what you charge for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, one of the real encouraging things, I think, as I've done the podcast this year, Jacco, and started to talk a lot more to earlier stage startups like yourself, has been, I think, this view where there's been very many different approaches to getting the business off the ground, but everybody seems to have focused on getting a product into the hands of customers as early as possible with as little capital or investment as possible as well. What would you say have been the benefits for you of taking that approach versus, and I remember that conversation, right? A lot of the advice that I gave you was probably contradictory to a lot of stuff that you were hearing from other people, but it was mainly because you could see that what was happening was, this approach of just going and raising a lot of money and spending all your time raising capital and never building something. It's cool if the tap's never going to get turned off, but at some point the tap gets turned off. How have you found kind of the approach that you took has benefited you as we've entered a period where, there is, the capital isn't flowing as freely?
Yeah, I mean, look, I go back to that conversation again. So many things of what you said to us at the time has been completely spot on. I'm not saying that to blow smoke up your ass. Like, I actually mean it. You were spot on, and I think that you were onto something. I think to a specific degree there, if you looked at just raising capital for a period of time was, I wouldn't call easy, but if you had something, it wasn't as hard as what it used to be. Now, you will also remember the two of us had a conversation about the kind of people that we should hire really early on. And you specifically advised me not to go too high up, but actually get people on the ground to kind of actually do the work instead of like the fluffy stuff, right? And you can hire the fluffy stuff later on when you talk about strategy and how you get there. I think it's helped us to get to market really quick. And as I mentioned earlier in our chat today, we launched our initial product middle last year, probably May last year. And the amount of feedback that we got has put us on a trajectory that changed everything. Right? Like, our product has changed significantly since that time, where I would say we only really hit product market fit October, November last year. And you can see kind of like a hockey stick change into our sales process.
Wow.
Since then, because it was very slow. It was really hard to kind of get, a customer in. It was one of those things we were scratching our head. And as we took the feedback on board, it improved the product to the point that people go, okay, well, if you do this one more thing, you really have solved my entire ecosystem. And a small example of that is like we've been hammered by people saying, can you please give us a credit card? What we really want is a credit card. What we really want is an expense management platform. And it really fit into our entire kind of sales process of being one unified platform for all your expenses. Now, because we listened to them, at the time we were thinking, well, there's enough card solutions out there. Everybody's got a card. And we turned out to be wrong. What people now want is going back to having things in a unified place where you can have an overview of your company expenses instead of having these multitude of apps all over the place.
Yeah. Awesome. I love what you've said there, because if you take that journey, Jacco, you're talking about 12 months to go from idea to product market fit, hundreds of paying customers and 30 people. I mean, that's kind of that's kind of unheard of, right? Like, things don't normally happen that fast. What would you say are kind of some of the things that have helped you, other than kind of getting listening to customers? What have been some of the other things that have helped you really move that quickly along the journey?
It's been people, Dexter. Like it is a cliche, and I realize it is, and I wish it wasn't, because there's so much truth in it, right? It's not me and Francois anymore, right? Like, the thing that's changed since you and I spoke, like you kind of asked that question, it's the kind of people that we have on board. We've only just hired a marketing team recently, for example, but we've got a kick-ass marketing team, right? Yeah. Like a really good team, and they've only started a month ago. So we've done this without a marketing team, and I'm excited to see what our marketing team can do. And if you look at the kind of people that are kind of involved, there's people that work the same effort as me and Francois because they really want to solve the problem. They're passionate and they're really proud about the work that they do. And we've never had to kind of crack a whip or kind of be extremely strict and say, listen, we have to do this or have to do that. These people have this inherent, like, real passion to kind of help other people, and they care about the customer. And for them, those two things together, if you hire the right people, it really comes down to kind of, you don't have to say much. Like, people will get out of their way. So me and Francois really are just trying to get out of our people's way at this stage.
I remember actually we had this conversation when we were sitting having that coffee in DY, and we talked, and you shared an experience, and I think we were talking about the challenges of growing businesses and scaling businesses. And we talked about this kind of magic number between 30 to 50 people where it starts to change, right? Like, and I remember you saying to me, when it was 30 people, everybody, you were all in cubby holes next to each other and everybody could hear everything that was going on. And then as you start to get bigger, people got more distance between themselves and there were too many people and you couldn't have that. Now, obviously, we're all working, or most of us are working remotely, so you don't have that at all. How have you managed to kind of, get that magic, the kind of secret sauce that, we were able to get just because we had people in proximity of each other and friendships came and you got bounced ideas and you had that, just that energy that comes of getting people in a room. How have you managed to take that and take it to a remote or kind of, online version?
I can't believe that you remember that conversation, because that's exactly how it went, right? Like, it was a 30, 50, 100 thing. Yeah. And there was a previous company that I worked at that we went through that. And you spot on. It's not been easy. I won't lie to you. I actually found the transition from being together in an office to fully remote really tough to go through. Not because, I've actually always been a fan of it. I've always wanted that. It's the
we used to bump into each other at Stone and Chalk in the lifts all the time, right? We were the only two people there.
That's right. I remember, right? Like, it was nuts. And I was just looking, is it the two of us today?
Mate, we're the only ones that see the side of the buses now with Pedro.
I know. I don't know. It's not been easy, but I think one thing that we've tried to do is to get people together. So We flew in everybody across the country a few weeks ago, and we went out together, as a team, and we spent 3-4 days together, which was magical. And we also do a couple of things on Slack and this is just a reminder, we haven't actually had one in about 2-3 weeks, where we kind of have like 4:00 on a Friday, we do all our drinks together. So what we'll organize is a couple of drinks, and people just don't work, and we just chat about, what's happening in people's lives and actually connect. So the thing is, if you get into fully remote, our relationship with each other becomes very transactional.
Yeah.
And it becomes extremely kind of like, actually task orientated or goal orientated.
Yeah.
I noticed a couple of people recently released something on LinkedIn called like a task filler, or, if you're working remote, you're just executing through tasks.
Yeah.
And, I can see that happening very quickly. In our case, we've really focused on not just being about tasks and actually being about working together.
Yeah.
I wouldn't profess to have cracked it, Dexter. I think the same as everybody else. We're still trying to get our heads around how's the best way to do this. But if I look at some of these people here, some of them are working moms. They've got kids 9 months old, or kids 5 years old. I've got 2 kids.
Yeah.
If you look at all the challenges, those are some of the most hardworking people in our business. Right, are the ones that need to be able to kind of have flexibility. They won't peep about having to finish work after 8:00 at night. I don't have to say anything. They just finish it.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, again, it comes down to people, and it comes about effort, like actually a conscious effort about connecting outside of work.
Awesome. I want to talk a little bit more about, I guess, just the fintech industry in general. What area of fintech has got you most excited right now, Jacco, other than your Paytron and what you're doing?
I think I would have to think about that a little bit. There's a couple of things that really kind of start to jump front of mind. I think open banking is very exciting, but I mean open banking in terms of what we in Australia know as the pay to, or kind of right access. I think here, Dexter, you will probably see a couple of banks moving towards banking as a service. And what I'm excited of is I don't believe in this fintechs against banks kind of talk.
Yeah.
I think it's a bunch of nonsense, right? Fintechs will always need banks unless we get access to kind of somehow do the same thing, which, then you just become a bank. And banks actually need fintechs. There's a couple of customers that banks cannot service. They're not built to service in a way that fintechs can. You look at the average SME business banking. It's not built for how people do business these days.
Terrible, right? I contrast my experience with the same bank that I've got, my mortgage and my kind of personal accounts with, and my business account, and the difference in service is and technology it's disgraceful, right? Like,
I agree.
Issues with my credit card, and I get stuck on hold for like an hour, 2 hours at a time.
100%.
This is crazy, right?
And you look at the retail banking side, like I would argue they've got phenomenal offerings.
Yeah,
some of our Australian banks are something to be proud of, right? Yeah. But on the business side, it's not profitable for them to service these customers in this way. And that's where I think fintech can really work together. We've just partnered with JP Morgan, which I'm extremely excited about.
Awesome.
We're one of the only fintechs in Australia to actually do that. JP Morgan has also spoken to us, and they've already been a phenomenal partner. I cannot say enough good things about them. But whereas their whole view is the same as ours, we actually have this shared view where we're going to go after certain customers, and customers that they will eventually benefit from. So these banks and the fintech, this, you can see how this is working together. And then if you add on right access, open banking access, the end client can actually store their funds in a bank, and they can use fintechs to do the transactions in a way that makes sense to them, right? So we extend the service offering to the end business where everybody benefits. Right. And I like that kind of game. I like the kind of game where you're not fighting for the pie, but you're actually growing the pie.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think that's been certainly the kind of philosophy that we've had from about 2018, where I think it became clear that the neobanks, unless you were doing what 86-400 or up were doing, it was going to be very, very difficult to get any traction, right? And it's turned out to be that way, and we've seen some unfortunately go down, and some have had to pivot to be banking as a service players. So I think it's absolutely great to hear that the next wave, or not kind of the upstarts and trying to fight the banks, but recognizing that, hey, we're here to actually augment and deliver, together deliver what the promise of fintech.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's the real thing. I would say, on top of that, I am interested, and we're watching the space really closely as to what's happening when the crypto wave will hit business. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think that the use case is there yet. There's a couple of nice examples and cool things people are working on. But I'm keeping a close eye on when that comes to business, and we'll be there. If the right time comes. But I'm more. I think at the end, Dexter, as you alluded to earlier in this chat, we have to get back to kind of actually adding value instead of just working about buying in the sky kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And every part of this ecosystem, crypto, whether it's crypto or fintech or banks or whatever it is, it will play out. It will just take time to kind of find the right use case, right?
Obviously, the crypto world's gone through a bit of turmoil at the moment. We've seen certainly in the DeFi space, things are very reminiscent to me of what we seen in 2008 and the GFC. What are your kind of sentiments or thoughts around where the crypto space has to go in order for us to see mass adoption?
Look, I think there's still a couple of hurdles to overcome here. It's actually, there's no way around this but working together. I think if the crypto space, is also guilty of it, the same way as the banks, like everybody's like, no, I'm not going to work on the other side.
Yeah.
Eventually we'll find a use case that needs solving, that can be solved by crypto. It's not a hammer that you need to walk around trying to hit every nail and just trying to find the next nail to hit. It needs to have a real world problem. Definitely it will happen. There's some fascinating things that, some of our banking partners are involved with as well, that they've, really brought up a couple of these DeFi, let's call it funds. And there's some really exciting things happening. I don't know. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of close out. And I don't think it will be end. Everybody's calling doomsday. That's normally a sign to start buying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially when it's dropped as much as it has.
Jeez, I mean, I logged this morning. I just checked out of interest what's been happening. It's really bad out there. So
yeah, look, but it's there's a lot of tech stocks that have gone the same trajectory as well. So yeah. So as we wrap up, what can we expect from Paytron in the next 12 months, Jacco?
Yeah, so like I mentioned to Dexter earlier, like one of the most requested features we've had, and we've been fighting it. We've just been saying, no, we're not going to do it. We're never going to do cards. We're never going to do cards. And it looks like that problem is not solved in that sense. We are launching our cards. We've actually got a few beta customers up in June. One of the things that are very exciting is we'll be bringing a credit card to fintechs and to startups in particular.
Awesome.
One of the hardest things for startups to get is a credit card. We are solving that problem as we speak. We will be launching 1st of July. Our website right now doesn't reflect that, but we'll probably be up and running on the 1st of July. And at that point, we're going to bring a full expense management solution and a credit card to startups out there, where you can issue virtual cards and get cards as well. It's not going to be our main offering. It's just a feature. I don't think it's a product on its own anymore. I think it's time for these things to kind of be brought together. A couple of our customers have said to us, like, if you launch a card, I can bring everything in one place. And that's really the thing that we want to attack, Dexter, is we want to bring all your bill payments, all your invoices, all your card payments, all your credit cards and virtual cards, everything together in one space. And I think that to us is probably our next year. And I think, as you would have seen me traveling around the world, we're getting a lot of interest in the UK, which is slightly contrary to what I expected. I thought that the problem has been solved there. But the problem there is very much onto the bill payment side. It's not a card problem on that side. It's a bill payments first.
Yeah.
And please add a card second. And
Yeah.
I think that's what you'll see from us over the next year. It's expansion. It's just further expansion.
Awesome. Jack, I've got to say, it kind of fills me full of the warm and fuzzies, chatting with you and just seeing, really great, smart, humble, hardworking people be successful and doing it in the right way. It's just such a great example of, how an idea can be successful if you're prepared to do things and kind of, make sacrifices and listen and, kind of take on board feedback. It's awesome. So congrats to you and Francois. Just amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate it, Dexter. And I must say, I appreciate your, all of this advice. You and I just, started speaking that time in, when we first met in DY, and you've never charged us. You've just been one of those people that really to kind of just help out. And I think I can see that you've got a really good heart in this space, and I appreciate that, man. I just want to say thank you very much.
Awesome. You're welcome,
people
mate.
like you that actually help us along, right? So
yeah, look, and it's kind of what it's all about, right? Like we all benefit in the end.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congrats, and great to have you on the show. Where can people find out more about Paytron? We get a lot of great talent listening to this show who want to be involved in businesses that are making a difference. Where can people find out more?
I think, if you look at our new website about to launch around the 1st of July, we've acquired the rights of a US company, Paytron.com as well. So it's all under one unified thing now. It used to be .com.au, but it will all be .com.
Fantastic.
That's probably our best place, or LinkedIn as well is a really good place to start.
Cool. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Please help me support businesses like Paytron and people like Jacko by showing your support for the show with a like and subscribe. If you prefer to listen on podcasts, you can find us FinTech Chatter wherever you listen to podcasts. Until the next episode, stay safe.
FinTech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People. Leaders in FinTech Executive Search.